What's up everyone, and welcome back to another Andrew Martin Guitar YouTube video. I'm Andrew and I am really glad you're here. Today we are talking part 2 of my 2020 rig rundown. Today is all about pedals, so if you love gear, you love pedals, and you love hearing people talk about pedals, you are for sure in the right place. But before we begin, I want to remind you of 3 quick things that you can do to help out my channel and help out this video specifically. Number 1, make sure you hit the like button, especially if you like what I'm doing. Every like counts and they go a long way. Number 2, make sure you hit the subscribe button. This way, if you really like what I'm doing, you will never miss a video. You will always be up to date. And number 3, if you're gonna subscribe, why not hit the bell icon to make sure you get notifications every time a video is posted. Doing all 3 of these things are very helpful for me and they will be much appreciated. But you're here for pedals, you're here to talk about gear. And so let's dive into my pedal board. Let's talk about signal paths. You might even get to hear a few of them in the process. So let's get down to work.
All right, so here we have the pedal board. First things first, a few shopkeeping items. This board is a Pedal Train Novo 24. I am powering everything with a Walrus Audio Phoenix. And last but not least, the cabling. I hand soldered all of these cables myself. They are square plug, like the SP 400 ends, I believe. And then it is Mogami cable that I used for all of these. And then these MIDI cables here that you see running into, or from my MIDI controller to the looper and then to the 3 Strymon pedals, they are all disaster area. I got them directly from their website. So yeah, that is kind of all the peripheral things. So let's get into the signal chain itself. All right, so first and foremost in my signal chain, I go directly from my guitar to the Kali 76 Compact Deluxe. This is by far my favorite compressor that I've ever used. And this one by far is the most expressive, I would say, and the most subtle compressor that I've ever tried that still simultaneously adds just so much to your tone. I love it. My settings change from time to time depending on what I'm recording, but this compressor is top notch. Next thing in the chain is the MicroPog. So it goes into the compressor, into the MicroPog. These things are great for adding a sub-octave to a rhythm line to make it sound super beefy, or a higher octave to a lead to make it soar, or if you want to do something super cool and ambient or like an organ sound, this thing is great. I use it for a lot of different stuff, especially in the worship context, or if I'm playing anything ambient, this is really good to give me those like Belle kind of ethereal like tones with the right reverb. Okay, so from the POG, we go directly into the input of the disaster area DPC8EZ. This is the 3rd generation of this unit, and it is a MIDI controllable bypass looper. So it has 8 slots. If you notice, I'm only using the first 4, and I use these for my overdrives up here. I have to admit, I got a little bit lazy. I got the Walrus Ages most recently, and I got really excited. I threw it on. It doesn't even have Velcro underneath it, and I threw it on in place of the pedal that I sold to get this. And so this is not the final resting place of this pedal, but it is in loop number 1 down here. And then the loop number 2 is the Jackson Audio Bellstar. Loop number 3 is the Paul Cochran Timmy Overdrive, and then loop number 4 is the 1981 DRV. And I have to admit, this is by far the, I think, most pleased I am I've ever been really with my tone. These overdrives are top notch and they play really, really well together. So I'll go through each of these really quickly. I'll let you hear a little demonstration of them by themselves, and we'll keep on going. So first loop, like I mentioned, is the Walrus Ages. I think eventually this will be in the Bellstar spot. I'm gonna swap them eventually, but this thing is killer. It's a Swiss Army knife. It covers everything that you would need, from super low gain and transparent all the way up to like gnarly high gain tones. I'm not gonna demo this one in this video because I will link in the description below to another video that I did that is 5 different micro compositions based on the 5 different modes in this pedal. It has 5 different clipping modes and at different gain levels, and I wrote short pieces inspired by each of the modes. So feel free to go down into the description to check that out if you want a more in-depth look at the Ages. Moving on to the Bellstar, I love this pedal. I actually got this on an impulse. I didn't go through the normal research that I normally do with an overdrive pedal before I got this. A buddy of mine from the church that I used to play at got one. I heard it once, and then I went and bought it actually that day in the green room. This thing is killer. I love it for its low gain tones. I never have this thing set high. This is normally something, this is really my first stage, and it's normally something I use to add a little bit of sparkle to my clean tone. So really quickly, let's take a listen to these settings, how I would normally play this, and give you a little idea of what it sounds like. Next in the chain, like I mentioned, in loop number 3 is the Timmy. This thing is iconic. It's a classic. Everybody uses them, and there's a reason why. This thing is super transparent. I love it, and I actually use this as a stage 2. So I don't have the gain very low. I've got it at about 75% or so here, and I like this pedal in the middle clipping position, pretty much right as I've got it set right here, and I love it as a second stage, as a really great, just crunchy rhythm drive. And this pedal plays extremely well with the Bellstar. These two together, I will actually stack these together to get a really nice lead tone, especially when I'm playing for church. But for now, let's take a quick listen to the Timmy and what it sounds like the way I have it set right now. And last, and by a long shot, very much not least, we have the 1981 Inventions DRV. Now this thing, I am just going to go ahead and say it, lives up to the hype, 150, 200,000%. This is incredible. I've never really been like a rat circuit guy, but this thing is so much more than that. If anybody tries to tell you it's just a normal rat clone, they're wrong. This thing is killer, and I was running it as a distortion with the drive like at noon, where I would have it at like 10 or 11 o'clock. But recently, I stumbled upon Mark Johnson on Instagram, shout out to him, and he uses it with the drive almost all the way down, or if not, with the drive all the way down. And as I've been doing more ambient looping, this thing is super great with the gain all the way off, as like a nice sparkly first stage overdrive. It shines extremely well at that setting too. So this one and the Ages specifically, the knobs are always changing depending on what I need. These two stay pretty much the same, but these two are changing. So I might have the gain all the way down for something I'm doing at home, and then I go out to play and it's all the way up again to really get that nice distortion tone. But for the soundbite, to listen to it really quickly, I'm going to set it a little bit hotter and show you how it shines at a higher gain setting. All right, so we're done with drive land. This is, again, the Disaster Area DPC-8EZ. It allows me to switch my drives really easily, and I'll get into this in a little bit, but it's also MIDI controlled, so it makes switching drives, stacking, and everything really convenient. So right after this, and I should say the Polytune is running out of the tuner out of the DPC, and it's always on, so all I have to do is throw my volume pedal back and then tune whatever I want to. Really easy, and there is no tone loss whatsoever from that. So after the looper, it goes straight to the volume pedal, and I put my volume pedal after my drives because doing a lot of playing in churches and doing a lot of ambient playing, if I'm playing high gain sounds, I want to make sure that when the volume pedal is down, there is no bleed. This looper does have a tuner mute. If you hold down the A button down here, and then you hit it again to get out of the tuner mute button, but this is after the overdrives to make sure that there really is no noise when I have the volume pedal down. But from the volume pedal, we go to the Strymon Iridium. Okay, so I can't say enough good things about this pedal. When they dropped this, I got really excited. I started listening to it, and I was hooked immediately. To put it into context, I sold my Kemper that I had been using for about a year and a few months to get this pedal because I wanted to get everything on one board. I wanted to not have to carry around something other than my pedal board and my guitar. And I didn't go the stomp route. For those of you that are going to be commenting, why didn't you get a stomp? Well, I already had most of this board already, and I didn't want to sell everything. I wanted something that I could just put right in with the pedals that I already had and I already loved. So I got this and was blown away. This thing, and I'm probably going to start a fight in the comment section below, but this thing sounds more real to me than the Kemper ever did. And that could have been me as a user not using it to its fullest extent and to its fullest capabilities, but this Iridium is incredible. I love it. I can't say enough about this. This has gotten me, and I would say is a big part of the best tones I've ever gotten out of this pedal board so far. But most of the time, I'm running it in the chime setting, and I'm running it in the C position for the cab, which I have loaded with David Hillsop impulse responses. So I have a blue and a green in either of the two sides, so that I run, so I can run it stereo with a little bit of tonal variation in each side, and it just widens it just a little bit more to my liking. And these settings that you're seeing right now are pretty much what I go to. I actually switch this out a lot when I'm doing, like, recording something in the studio for someone else, or I'm working on my original music or writing for my podcast that I'm a part of. I'll go to the punch setting, I'll go to the round. So this changes quite frequently in the same way some of my overdrives do. But these settings right here are my go-to settings, and they are what I have called in as my favorite, just to have a nice pedal platform amp sound to go to whenever I need it. But this thing is incredible. If you're wondering how this sounds and how I use it, every video that is on my channel currently, every single one is actually using the Iridium as its amp tone. I don't own an amp. I don't own a physical amp. I have in the past, but this thing gets the job done for sure. So here's where we get into a little bit more of a discussion. I have questions about this a lot, and I run the Iridium before my time-based effects. So it runs from the volume pedal to the Iridium in, and then begins stereo out to the timeline, then the Mobius, and then the Bigsky. Now, a lot of people ask me why I do that, and ask why I don't run this as the last thing in my signal chain. And what I found when I first got it, because that was originally when I was kind of testing it and A-Bing it with my Kemper, I would just put this on the floor beside my board and I ran it after everything. And it worked extremely well with anything I threw at it on the round and the chime settings. However, on the punch setting, which is based after a Marshall amp, the second you get the drive to, like, right here in this territory where we're getting into, like, the hotter amp, higher gain tones, you begin to lose headroom in the same way you would when you cranked a normal tube amp. And so this doesn't have an effects loop as many high gain amps do. And so for that reason, I decided to put it ahead of these so that I can run any high gain, clean, whatever tone I wanted out of this. And I can then add my wet effects to it to any extent I wanted. So it goes from the Iridium into the timeline. And these three pedals are pretty self-explanatory. They're monsters. They're heavy hitters. I've actually had this timeline since my very first pedal board that I ever built. I love this thing. And yeah, everybody has them and everybody uses them. But these things, if you dive into the other modes and you dive into the sounds that Strymon put into them, they're incredibly versatile, incredibly useful tools. So I use a lot of these delays. Most notably the D-tape, the D-bucket, the digital, and the dual. I use those for a lot in different ways. I love the reverse delay on this for ambient playing and getting really cool atmospheric effects. The reverse delay is super, super cool. And one of my favorites that I didn't expect to like, but I really enjoy, is the trim delay. And so, yeah, I mean, you gotta dive in and make sure you're not using one mode on any of these to different mix levels or different repeat levels, but these things are incredible. Now, the Mobius, you'll probably see that I have it actually on a setting that emulates a Boss CE3 or kind of like a CE2 chorus effect. This pedal never ceases to blow me away with how nice and how real these effects sounds. If you know Strymon, you know that they're not, quote, digital sounding effects. They sound very real and very true to the original effects that they're modeling after. And so this thing definitely does not fall below that standard. I want to shout out the Destroyer mode. I've been using that a lot lately, and it is such a useful tool. So useful, in fact, that I'll probably end up doing my own video on it and how I use it in my looping compositions. But again, if you get out of using like your normal choruses and your tremolos and stuff, there's some really useful stuff in here that can be very inspiring. And then last but surely not least, the Bigsky. So I use the Cloud a lot. I use the room and halls a lot. I love the spring reverb in here to get just a different kind of vintage sounding ambience. But these reverbs, and you'll notice on these Strymon pedals, the more, quote, experimental sounds are always on like the right side of the curves. They have some really cool sounds in here. The Magneto one is kind of like a combination of a reverb and delay. It's really strange. You'll have to look up what the actual definition on the website, but that one's really inspiring as well. But then you'll notice that I've got some cables kind of hanging out over here. Normally after my 3 Strymon pedals, I would use these 2 cables that go underneath my board to a stereo DI box that converts my signal to 2 XLRs that I send out to the front of house or to my interface. But while I've been at home during the pandemic, I've been doing more looping. I have an Electro Harmonix 22500 stereo looper, dual stereo looper that I use. And for ease of use, I have taken the DI off the bottom of my board, and I run these 2 cables to the front of the looper, and then 2 cables out of the looper to the front of the DI, so that I can have the DI and the looper on the floor with me like you've seen in some of my other videos on here. But then I run 2 XLRs out to my interface. I want to mention these 2 guys down here and how they work together. So I have the DMC 8 from Disaster Area Designs, and this is my MIDI controller, and this is the brains of my pedal board. So I can use any combination of the 3 Strymon pedals right here and any combination of loops, and I can pre-save it. So I use this to start every song if I'm playing a live set. I do a lot of overdrive stacking myself in the middle of songs. I don't have presets for each parts of the songs like some people do, but I definitely start each song with a new preset, and it makes transitions, especially at church when you're moving from one song to the next with click, and it's really quick, and you got to do it really fast without having to tap dance. This makes it super, super easy. And as you can see, I'm working in the timeline. Going through my devices is super easy. You can turn them on, you can turn them off, and whatnot. And then one thing I really want to highlight with this is that you can control the timeline's looper with this pedal in looper mode. So you can record, you can dub, you can play, you can stop, you can redo and undo directly from this pedal. You can half time it and reverse it. And this expands the capability of this timeline looper so much more than you can get by just using the buttons here. So this thing is incredible. I can't recommend it enough. But for me and the way I play, this thing is incredible. It's got an onboard tap tempo that I can use to slave these 2 pedals and a favorite switch if I ever need it. But Disaster Area is incredible. You should check them out if you if you're in the need for a MIDI solution for your board. But yeah, these are my go-to pedals. I use them all the time, and they're going to be on my board for a long time. If you're interested in the way I use this to loop, there will actually be another video coming in the coming weeks on that as well.
All right, everyone, this has been part 2 of my 2020 rig rundown, all about my pedal board and my pedals. If you like what I'm doing here, again, please make sure that you hit that like button, that you subscribe, and you turn on the bell icon to make sure that you receive notifications when videos go live. Again, if you have any questions at all, please make sure to leave them in the comments below. I'll try to answer as many of them as I can in a timely manner. But I've been Andrew. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.